welcome to the next edition of Serverless Craic. How are we getting on? All good?
Very good. I think we've been traveling the last week, so everyone's jet lagged a little bit, I would imagine.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we've maybe circumferenced the planet.
I know. Hold on. It's all good. Well, good news is that everything is all our ideas are popular all over the world, which is good. So not quite an echo chamber yet.
Seemed
Um,
like the go-to serverless last week, Dave. It seemed like a good event.
yeah, go to serverless in Bangalore, which is great. Unbelievable. I had 750 tickets sold, I believe.
Very good.
So it's really exciting to see how strong serverless and serverless first is and all the excitement about that combined with AI. So super, super vibrant and unbelievable community. It's great. It's like the old days. No, it's fantastic. Really, really good time. And yeah, brilliant. Um, yeah, so we're continuing our series with the book. We are on chapter 14, which is in phase three of the flywheel. Next best action. Chapter title is the Frictionless Developer Experience. Ooh.
Oh dear.
So thought we might have a bit of fun with this one actually, because with all the talk over the past 18 months about, developers will be replaced by AI, yada yada yada. Um, I thought it might be good as we go through this chapter is to sort of review the what we wrote a few years ago and see like does it still stand up? We can be honest, is it still important in this world of AI and everything else? Um, I'd be interested. Well, I hope there's one or two things that are maybe we're getting outdated, but we'll see. We'll see if we got our principles right.
Yeah. And I think in the like it's paragraph 4 there, we say it's critical that the developer experience is correct for your company's unique needs and culture.
Hmm.
That sounds still true to me.
Hmm. And even I think within some of the cool kind of AI workflows we're seeing, or the AI development lifecycle, um, I can see a lot of friction at the minute.
Yeah.
It's hokey because people are going back and forward, and sometimes people are saying like, it's cool, but I'm spending a lot of time trying to figure out what's going on and fixing things and going down kind of rabbit holes. So it's it's cool what's happening at the minute. We're now mid 2025, but it's not frictionless.
No.
Certainly is not. Hopefully it will be now, and I think it's moving pretty fast, but you couldn't describe it as frictionless at the minute.
No, and I think with the rapid emergence of new patterns, techniques, and tools, how do you do things in a compliant, repeatable, consistent fashion? And how do you go through the the good quality gates and controls that you would want to have for any sort of production sort of system, right? So how do you make sure that all those good engineering practices that have been matured for decades now apply to the AI capabilities and the AI outputs in the same way that you would for an engineering team just by staff of people, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big theme of this chapter is around enablement, right? Enabling engineers to do certain things, but it's the big thing there is also enabling them to do things, enabling them not to do certain things as well, right? Or disabling is probably the word, right?
Enabling constraints. Yep.
Enabling constraints. And I think even in this world where the pressure, a lot of the stuff we've been talking about through the book and, through the evolution over the last sort of number of years is stuff shifting left onto the engineer,
Yeah.
including even understanding the business. And now with AI, the anticipation is you're going to do more, and you're going to go faster. And again, that can lead to engineers being pressured into doing things that are maybe not necessarily recommended or advisable, right?
And
Um,
we seen this pattern starting years ago. Remember when all the shift left stuff started?
Yep.
It's like you've come in the industry because you like the right code, and now you're being asked to do, everything, like including talk to stakeholders and talk to customers. It's insane the amount of that how wide the context is you have to have. And it's definitely in the techniques of 10, 15 years ago, it would have been impossible to build like this. Would have just been too much.
Yeah, and
But it's
there's one thing that we'll touch on later in chapter around team topologies, but one of the big sort of tenets of that is about managing your cognitive load and the
yep.
cognitive burden of teams. And like you say, we've added another massive value chain of components that is AI into the development team's cognitive load, right? And so, that managing that while also managing all the other concerns that the team are doing is no easy feat. So we need to make sure that the environment is set up to enable them to get through a lot of those sort of stage gates and quality gates with as much little friction as possible, so that at least that part of it, their cognitive burden is minimized to a degree, right? So there's a process, there's practices, there's guidance, there's tools, there's a technology that will help guide you along that path without you having to think about it too hard. It's going to be a big part of this.
Yeah, it's huge. And the whole thing as well, I mean, I think with the thing we always are keen to highlight with developer and frictionless developer experience is about engineering excellence. You
Yep.
know, you're building a system. You may use AI to generate a component or write a component, but everything has to fit together into a system that meets a need. So, you know, it's the creation of that system is what is the creating software is. And then, does that system does it last for several years? Is it actually a valuable asset to the company, or is it a liability that's full of tech debt? Super interesting.
I do think with some of the AI and capabilities that a lot of teams have access to now, we can actually double down on engineering excellence more, because
Mm,
we can raise the bar higher because the tools will help you get over that bar. So like we used to have to educate and explain to teams what well architected was, around security, performance, operational excellence, reliability, performance, scalability, all that sort of good stuff. The AI coding assistants have been trained on a lot of those things. 12 factor apps would be another example. So, they can give you a lot of really rich, tangible, hardened guidance on how to meet those standards in a much easier way than it would have been to go and read the books, go and read the white papers, go and do a well architected review. A lot of that you can be enabled by the tooling to do that a lot more quickly.
I think that
mm,
goes back to, it's a chicken and egg type thing, isn't it? But you need to start out with those principles and those sort of engineering excellent kind of
Yeah.
tenets. And I think to your point, it helps bridge that gap. It helps you kind of implement and execute on your aspirations around the thing. And even in the modern day, it's even more important that you do kind of celebrate engineering excellence with the stuff that you're producing, leveraging these things, at the speed at which you're operating at. You're not really going to get a lot of time, to spend going troubleshooting or fixing certain things. So it's always kind of good to ship these things with good visibility, observability, have a good understanding of what you're doing with performance and cost. So again, these things we always talk about long-term value. It's really
mm.
important that you kind of, you take that stuff serious, and you apply it to whatever kind of process you're putting in place and how you can develop code. So
Yeah.
Mm.
I think it stands.
It's funny. I find this topic fascinating. You think about how well an organization can create software. It's not just the lump of code. It's the problem solved. And we did define these three sort of characteristics to consider. I'll just read out the three of them. Is kind of there is no finish line. So once you commit to delivering software, like you're not done. There's always like a marginal gains is a really nice headspace. It's not like I'll buy a car and that's finished. It's a finished product. You're continually changing. So it's things everything evolves with software. The second one was it's impossible to define. What is excellence, but there are definitely needs and expectations from software that must be met. So it's very hard to say what perfect is, but it's also very easy to identify when things aren't right. And anyone can do that from people within the company to customers and users. And then the third one was enable, not control. Like within software companies, we hire very smart people, software engineers, and one of the most stupidest thing in the world is to say, okay, now stop thinking, just do this. Like that's not how it works. So you need to create that environment where quality control is owned by the engineers and the teams, but also, expect it at the department level.
Yeah.
And we're seeing organizations that have well articulated what their engineering principles and values and standards are able to rapidly add that context to any of the AI stuff they're doing, and the AI
Mm,
knows exactly what that means. So if you say, I want to create an environment for high performing teams measured by DORA in space, and I want teams to be rapidly delivering a well architected solution, and I want it to be leveraging modern cloud technologies or a serverless first mindset and approach. If you have that well articulated in your context, you can pass that to the coding agents, and it can then generate you solutions that will be very aligned to those principles, values, and engineering sort of standards that you have hopefully articulated to the rest of the org, right? So if you've done a lot of the work that we would sort of advocate for over many years, if you've done those hard yards, it's actually easier for you to articulate what you want the AI to do for you on the other side.
Yeah.
And here's the thing as well, right? I mean, I always say that Stephen, I think the next page, the fundamentals of creating good software hasn't changed for 50 years. Like all those first principles of software engineering, but written
Yeah.
decades ago. Even reference like Jerry Weinberg and all the stuff he did in the Secrets of Consulting from the 80s. Which I love his books, he's brilliant. And that's what I think is really interesting. If you come into the industry now as a complete non-engineer and start vibe coding, like you're going to make all these basic mistakes that the AI won't do for you. So you actually need to understand the whole sphere of creating software, to understand how to write those principles you're talking about, Mark, and where you pick from. And many of those principles might be picked from 20, 30 years ago. You know, it's how you assemble that together. So it's not trivial to figure out what all those best practices and principles are about but what you need for your company. You do need an expert to help you out. And that's one of the reasons why you can see it already. Some people who don't code are getting into real trouble when you vibe code an app, launch it in the environment and think this is great, and then all of a sudden it breaks and they don't know what to do.
Yeah. And I mean, even in those kind of, what did we call them? The characteristics you just went through, the three characteristics.
Hmm.
The middle one is the one to kind of really think about. It is impossible to define. It is contextual. So you want your engineers being creative. You want your engineers kind of going solving the problems in the right way and not following standard. It's not a box ticking exercise. There isn't the kind of defined set of steps for every problem you're solving. You want to be that, you want that to be custom. And it's
Yeah.
the same here. You could vibe something for making a pitch, or you're kind of wanting to see how something looks, and that's fine. That's again the context there is I'm having a conversation with someone, I want to show it, but
Hmm.
I wouldn't vibe something and then try and integrate it into an enterprise ecosystem and kind of ship it out into prod. It's got to be done at certain standards and certain kind of ways of working, right? So again, it's contextual. And again, engineering excellence in one context, it's probably going to be slightly different
But that
to
was the way, if you think of it, like, I mean, when we did this in the past, like we did this for a few years at Liberty, and we always went between two names for this process. It was engineering excellence and HPE, or high performance engineering.
yeah.
I mean, I remember when I wrote the first paper for that, probably, God, what, 8 years ago or something. It kind of says this is a goal-driven framework. So it was like there will not be instructions here to tell you what to do. There'll be a set of expectations and goals that you must achieve. Like your software must be secure. You must meet the customer need. That it must be a team first environment. A whole bunch of goals. And the idea was that as a team, you can figure out how to meet those goals. And here's a whole bunch of best practices. So you do what you need to do, but the goals are non-negotiable. The goals are static, but how you get them is dynamic. And I think it's the same because stuff changes so much. Um, so for me, that's what engineering excellence is being smart enough to define the goals that you have for your project or your team or your org, and then let the engineers figure out how to hit them. It's outcome driven kind of leadership as opposed to task driven.
And
Yeah.
I think checklists are good, but what we're really trying to get to is we're injecting challenge. Have you thought about this? Have you thought
Mm.
about sustainability? Have you thought about resilience? Have you thought about security? Have you thought about performance? Have you thought about your pathway to prod and operational excellence? So we're trying to make sure that yes, we can say this is the goals we want, but here's some guidance, here's some challenging questions you should ask yourself and your team as that workload makes its way through your environments. Or do you have your runbooks and playbooks? Do you have your incident support set up? Do you have your alarms? There's a whole laundry list of challenging questions you should be asking of your workloads as they make their way through your SDLC, regardless of whether it's human built or AI generated.
Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm of the optimistic kind of opinion that, with the emergence of LLM and then sort of the agentic kind of software delivery models, the engineers should become more capable. there's stuff there that you would want to put more time into,
Yeah.
and I know that evolutionary cycle, it might hopefully just speed up a wee bit more. Like you may
Yeah.
be able to do more in the first kind of MVP than you say you did previously, or you may be able to evolve to an outcome a wee bit more quickly because you do have this assistant, who can kind of help you along with some of those things, and or you do have this assistant that helps you with the thinking and the approach, and
Mm.
that's the way it's got to be. It should make strong engineers even stronger and way more effective. But again, they should be working to these engineering excellence
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
standards.
a good it's a good point about the environment. I mean, put it this way, right? Just regardless of AI and everything else, imagine you're in a team and you say to the leader of that team, see this thing we're doing, there's a better way of doing it,
Mm.
right? Now imagine if that leader turns around and says, shut up, we're doing it my way. We're going to do it the slow way. And you say, well, I've got a better way here. You
Hmm.
just leave the team. I think that's ridiculous. You know what I mean? So any technical leader, architect, whatever, you say, well, there's a better way of doing this. I mean, no one's thought of everything. So it's as I say, it's bad crack to be saying, no, we're not doing that. So I think what AI gives you is it gives all engineers a huge body of knowledge to play about with stuff and then say that there's a better way of doing this. I mean, I certainly for any of my team server, if someone ever says that, you take the hand off them. You're like, brilliant, let's go. Because you
We
Yeah.
can't do everything.
we touched on this in earlier chapters, but psychological safety and that
Yeah.
so important because you want to invite that level of challenge because that's how you all improve together. I do think also it's like the knowledge has been democratized. Like if you say, "Hey, we're going to be aiming for a well-architected solution," some junior engineer goes, "I don't know what that is." You can fire up a notebook LM, fire in well-architected. It will go do the stuff. It'll create you a podcast, a mind map, and now videos that'll explain it to you. Same for some
Yeah.
of the like study and learn type capabilities that are emerging from like ChatGPT and others. There is no barrier to going deep and learning about any one of these sort of topics or principles or values or techniques that we're talking about now. The barriers that used to be you have to go buy a book or talk to somebody or get access to some tooling that was very expensive. Those barriers have mostly been
Yeah.
removed.
Higher up the value chain, right?
Imagine that when you were young. My God, imagine people say like, if you didn't know something, here, hang on, I've generated you a podcast, go for a walk, come back in 20 minutes, and you'll be all set.
Incredible.
It's nuts. So one thing we like, I know we're massive fans of Team Topologies, but since before the book came out, I think. And we go from the engineering excellence and that environment into Team Topologies. And again, if you haven't read the book, go out and buy it now. Team Topologies by Matthew Skelton, Manuel Pa. Um, on IT Revolution as well. And it's just it's there's a load of stuff in the book. People always say, oh, it's the four team types, but there's actually a load more stuff, which I'll not even get into. But one of the things that was always super important about developer experience was team first, to let the team figure it out, you know what I mean? And one thing that really supports that is using the four team types of team topology to identify between a streamlined team who are working on a single kind of value stream, an enabling team who are maybe doing something like platform engineering or architecture, helping them, a complicated subsystem team who are probably working on something quite specific like an ML thing or like a rating model or something very complex, like maybe some financial transactions or something, and a platform team who maybe stand up like your cloud infrastructure or your data infrastructure. So those four team types. And when you're in that team type, it's very clear you might have a different customer, a different way of working, so a different goal. And so I would say it's an interesting question to say in the world of AI development or AI generated yada yada, do these four team types still stand up? But I think they do.
I think they do in the interaction mode still stand up. It's going to be interesting how it evolves when you have truly agentic elements as part of the team. If you're offloading sort of some coding work to an agentic coding assistant that will pick up tasks from your backlog and work them to completion and create your PR, and then somebody interacts with it. There's a slightly different team topologies, interaction mode, and sort of maybe even team type that might emerge. I'm not sure how this is going to play out, but definitely it's definitely different and it's going to evolve how this all operates. And one of the most valuable things we used to do was like, what type of team are you? And help teams understand, why is this team so stressed? Why is it so busy? Oh, because they're trying to be four different types of team in one team, right? There's lots of value there. So I think assessing what your team type is assessing what your interaction modes are, and then figuring out, well, how does an AI agentic system play in those elements? It's going to be
Yeah.
really interesting to see how that evolves. And I don't have any right or wrong answer for this one. I think it's just
Mm.
it's gonna evolve.
Well, it is the space to watch, right? It's all about socio-technical organization. And so like be interesting to see over the next sort of maybe 2 to 3 years the impact of the AI agent on the organization, right? You can
Yeah.
even see like the well architected stuff's going to have to evolve and adapt and again to the agentic approaches.
Mm.
Even yeah, well, all our kind of engineering standards are going to have to the platform teams, you know, how do we give access and control what things and tools the squads are kind of using and
Mm.
adapt, and even from a cost kind of management. So you can see maybe the platform groups have a lot more kind of things to do now, with agentic runtimes and
Yeah.
access provision to LLM. So I feel like it's an interesting picture.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I'd go out on a limb and say, I think we talked about if you're a team doing X, and you like so it's that thing about do one thing and do it well. Um, your purpose should still retain, but I think the difference, the difference that you'll see is that I think your level of execution will be better. Not necessarily faster, not necessarily with less people, but I think there'll be a higher quality of output because of the environment we have now. I do think enabling teams will be a lot busier. I think they have much more tools at their fingertips. Um, one thing, I don't necessarily think teams will be smaller. I always think teams should be pretty lean anyway. I mean, the old Scrum guide was between like 4 to 7 people. That's a good team size. I think the big teams of like 15 people team, all doing tickets and kind of not really knowing what they're doing. I think that has to start going away. That was never a good pattern. That's more of a flag of bad management than anything else. It's
yeah.
more like a pool of people. It's not really a team. So I think if you've small, like, teams with good missions that are well set up, I think in this Gen AI landscape, their level of output
Yeah.
will be of higher quality, I would say.
Do you think they'll need to rely on a complicated subsystem team quite so much, or will that be something that they can then take on board themselves with the rapid learning and rapid emerging capabilities of AI to help you do
Mm,
more complicated things more easily?
it's interesting, but you still need to own the domain, you
Yeah,
know. If I was doing financial transactions for a multi-billion-dollar company and I have a team full of experts, and all of a sudden some LLMs tell me what I need to do,
yeah,
I think I still want the experts to check it.
absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, everything we talk about, like long-term value, teams are going to get through more. They're going to be running more in production.
Yeah,
So I kind of feel like even that in itself, and then kind of how that plays out with where the business goes, because obviously orgs are going to be doing more, and they're probably going to be moving into different markets, different business kind of domains.
Mm.
I really do think it's going to be augmentation, not replacement. I think we're going to be just doing 10x more things at a higher
Mm.
level and a higher quality.
Well, it has to be, unless we're talking about something that's completely philosophically, different to how software kind of works today, and I don't think we're there yet. Um, yeah.
I think maybe just touching this next few section quickly. I mean, I always like the idea of Dan Pink's drive, motivation. And I do think the autonomy of when you have an idea, the autonomy to build that thing, I think that's going to retain more than ever,
Oh yeah.
you know. The idea of a manager telling all the teams what to do and giving them all tasks, I mean, that was never
No.
right, but it's even less right now.
Autonomy,
Um,
mastery, and purpose is going to be more critical than ever. I think you want to create an environment where teams are able to explore these things and bring them to bear in a way that actually does make a big impact and does deliver massive
yeah,
amount of value. You can't be interfering too much with that. You gotta create an environment where they're able to do what they need to do.
I think the point, like, it's come up in a few of the open spaces we've been around lately around mastery. Engineers are kind of worried that the mastery is getting replaced with just calls in the LLMs and everyone's getting lazy. But then I kind of take the opposite view. I kind of feel like the situation it puts engineers in is that you've got to understand what these things are outputting, and then you are still going to be the one that's, even if you weren't in, say you didn't write that block of code, you should still have a really strong opinion about the code that was produced. So in more ways, you should be having to learn more and understand more about the underlying tech and
yeah,
become more of a quality kind of expert. So So, and then, but then again, it's just changing. Maybe the picture's slightly different. You're going to have to become more of a master of the system, as well as the workings of the system. So,
Yeah.
I think it's different, but at the same time, I feel like there's still shit tons there for us to be learning and to be
Yeah.
understanding,
Oh,
right?
it's the systems thinking, the critical thinking, or even quote your favorite superhero film. With great power comes great responsibility. So,
Yeah,
Yeah,
um,
I think the critical thinking is going to be key, and also you got to be able to stand over whatever it outputs. So your team, your tech lead, that PR that's merged, you need to be responsible for the
mhm.
impacts that has downstream. So you still need to be
yeah,
able to review it and understand it and decide if it's good enough.
Yeah,
yeah. That probably brings us nicely code as a liability. But before we hit that, a quick one on like where I was talking about the four key metrics in DORA from Accelerate by Nicole Forsgren, Jess Humble, and Jean Kim. Um, there was two categories of those four metrics was throughput and stability. I think they still stand up.
Oh yeah,
yeah, 100%. If you're going to, again, it's back to what we were talking about earlier in the chat. You know, again, some of the things you want your workloads instrumented. You want to be able to see what they're doing, observe what they're doing, right, in production
Hmm.
environment.
Well,
Um,
stability's going nowhere. I mean, that doesn't get any easier. If you can generate code a lot quicker, maybe your throughput's brilliant, but your stability's going to suffer. So you still need those quality practices.
your
mhm.
lead time for change should be much improved. I think you can get stuff out there. I think they'll probably start seeing some emerging AI DORA sort of metrics around maybe Joe. Well, if it generates a lot of code that's may look good at first pass, but maybe it's hard to understand. So is it time to 10th PR, those type of metrics become more important. So well, what is actually the long term sustainable pace of teams who are leveraging these capabilities?
Hmm.
Yeah, and a quick point on that, just on resiliency, like one of the things that you do struggle to get to on first pass implementations is the resilience side of the workload. Typically, you'll
Hmm.
go into prod and you'll say, okay, we're going to observe it in hypercare for an extended period. But with this, could we do more upfront? Could we build in a wee bit more kind of resilient, handling certain issues and errors as and when they occur, as opposed to, you
It's like
know,
there's like all the chaos engineering sort of techniques and
yeah,
practices and fault injection type scenarios that we wanted to get to but never could get to. Hopefully now we can get to them, right?
Yeah,
That's
well,
what you
that's the thing, just higher quality. So
that's
let's
what
hit on code as liability. So I mean that was a big thing, and I do think like I hit on this in the talk I did last week. It was like that if you're generating a whole bunch of code from a Gen AI from an LLM, like every line of code written is an expense. So, the code needs to be tested, documented, secured, maintained, operated. That doesn't go away, and maybe your code base is getting more complicated now because there's more junk code. Like, so code quality, I think, is still an issue.
yeah, and that's it's going to be read many more times than whenever you first write it, right? So it's like, how do you maintain that low cognitive load now and into the future if you've got millions and millions of lines of generated code, right? So you're going to have to be very careful about how much code liabilities you're starting to generate with some of the AI capabilities.
Mm.
mm,
And then you want to write code that agents will also be able to read and understand and write more stuff on top of that.
Yeah,
So, all this stuff is important to maintain that context, etc.
and I think increasingly your code is a liability, but your tests and the scenarios and the behaviors and the specifications for the code are going to be much more valuable. So you're starting to see the emergence of spectrum development. You're starting to see much more attention around BDD and ATTD type techniques.
Mm.
If you have a really good comprehensive test suite with all of those things incorporated into it, the code that's generated, its goal should be to make those tests pass. So, at least I think you'll start to see a reemergence of GA, test engineering, testing pyramids, a doubling down on that because the code could be regenerated as long as all the tests pass,
Mm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking to someone last week about APIs and specs and stuff, and they've just been through the roof around the importance of specific like contracts for your APIs, etc.
Yeah,
Never been more important. Um,
yeah. I think
it's
the other
just,
thing is security too, right? Like the MCP kind of flaws and stuff like that. So you really got to watch your tool chain and your dependencies, and make sure you've got good mitigations in place. It's kind of looking at what what you're bringing in
Mm.
and react to things in certain ways as well.
Yeah, you could change code as liability to MCP as liability.
Well,
Just
that's not really revelational. It's all over the internet. It's all over. It's all over Reddit and Hacker News. Um, so interesting stuff. And then the shared outcome stuff hasn't really. That's not going to change regardless. I mean, you want to be recognizing the success of teams for building good software. So it's kind of interesting. Maybe we'll leave it there because there's a lot in this chapter. But I think a lot of those principles around engineering excellence and developer experience, they do still stand up in the AI landscape.
I think in the shared outcomes and recognition, it's also trying to instill that it's okay to talk about how you've used AI to get you where you are, right? So you want to encourage adoption, you want to encourage usage, you want people to try it out. So also share your AI success stories and maybe some of your war stories as well to help everybody embrace it. It's usually good to have that sharing those outcomes.
right.
All right.
Good stuff. Well, that's a crack then. We'll leave it at that. We'll keep going on chapter 14 next time around the frictionless developer experience. Please give us a look on Serverless Craic on YouTube or the serverlessaids.com blog. And thanks for listening. See you next time. Thank you.
You sure?
Bye. Bye.